Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a fascinating sociological analysis of caste and class systems. If you're a focused learner looking to truly grasp how human beings organize themselves and, why modern society actually looks the way it does, you are in the exact right place. We're going to explore the profound concepts of caste and class, looking specifically at the tension between rigidity and fluidity in Indian society. Okay, let's just dive right into it.
Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to cover caste origins and theories, the key characteristics of caste, casteism in modern times, what the class system is, changing social dimensions, and we'll wrap up with a direct comparison of caste and class. Let's get started.
Now, before we get into the heavy theory, I really want you to consider this quote by the prominent sociologist Ghurye. She wrote, "To understand culture is to understand caste." And what's so incredibly powerful about this statement is how perfectly it sets the stakes for our entire analysis today. She's telling us that the caste system isn't just some historical footnote, right, or an isolated social rule. It's practically the very DNA of the traditional culture itself. To decode one, you absolutely must decode the other.
All right, moving into section 1, caste, origins and theories. So, how did a system this deeply entrenched actually begin? Well, sociologists and historians have been debating this for decades. Let's look at the main theories. First, you've got the traditional or divine theory, which suggests caste originated from the creator Brahma, tying a person's status to their past karma. Then there's the occupational theory by Nesfield. He argued that it just stemmed from a primitive division of labor, basically what you did defined who you were. Next is the racial theory by Herbert Risley, proposing it started as a racial hierarchy between Aryans and Dravidians. And finally, absolutely crucially, we have Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's broken men theory. He posited that defeated tribes in historical conflicts were essentially forced to the margins of society. So he firmly rejected the traditional explanations and pointed straight to historical power struggles instead. Let's look at section 2, key characteristics of the caste system.
So once this system was up and running, however it began, how did it actually sustain itself? What structurally defines a caste? The pioneering sociologist G.S. Ghurye basically mapped out the core features perfectly. First, it creates a segmental division of society, meaning society is literally chopped up into rigid compartments. Second, there's a strict hierarchy based on concepts of purity and pollution. Third, and honestly this is the linchpin, endogamy, meaning marriage is strictly restricted to within your own group. And fourth, severe restrictions on dining and social intercourse. This brilliantly illustrates how a closed societal loop is maintained. By controlling who you can marry and who you can break bread with, the system essentially locks itself from the inside.
Now, a huge piece of this historical structure was the rural economic framework known as the Jajmani System, and this has sparked a really fascinating academic debate. On one hand, you have William Weiser, who viewed it quite positively. He saw it as egalitarian and functional, highlighting this mutual interdependence where different castes provided services for one another, ensuring economic security for the whole village. But on the flip side, Louis Dumont offers a really sharp critique. He argued it was deeply exploitative and oppressive, rooted entirely in purity and pollution, which created a super undemocratic master-servant dynamic. It's a great reminder of how the exact same sociological structure can be interpreted in vastly different ways.
Which brings us to section 3, casteism in modern times.
Because, society doesn't just stand still. With constitutional rights, rapid urbanization, and modern democracy, how has this ancient system actually mutated to survive today? Well, to get that, we have to look at casteism, or jati-vaad. Casteism is a social problem where blind loyalty to one's own caste totally supersedes broader societal interests. So while traditional untouchability has legally and functionally weakened in a lot of areas, the psychological and political identity of caste is fiercely protected. It shifts from being just an occupational hierarchy to an identity-based loyalty that unfortunately can drive prejudice, inequality, and conflict. And why on earth does it persist? Sociologically speaking, there are several modern factors actually making casteism stronger today. Obviously, you have the deeply rooted historical legacy, but look at these middle points: caste-based political mobilization and intercaste competition for reservations. Modern democratic tools like elections and the demand for affirmative action actually encourage groups to consolidate their caste identities so they can gain political power and resources. Plus, the continued existence of caste-based organizations and that strict endogamy we talked about, that keeps the borders between these groups tightly sealed. But there is pushback. A movement known as decasting has emerged. Decasting is the deliberate process of challenging and ending deep-rooted caste-based discrimination, inequalities, and prejudices. And just to show you how completely global this conversation has become, get this. In February 2023, Seattle, Washington became the very first city in the U.S., outside of South Asia, to legally ban caste discrimination. Isn't that wild? It just proves that as populations migrate, their social systems migrate right along with them, making this a truly global sociological issue.
Shifting gears now. Section 4. What is the class system? So, if caste is all about birth and staying exactly where you are, class represents an entirely different way to organize society. Sociologists MacIver and Page defined it like this. A social class is any portion of a community marked off from the rest by social status. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that class shifts the defining metric of a human being. It completely moves away from the lineage you were born into, and instead it looks at your acquired economic and social standing. But how do we actually figure out someone's class? Let's check in with the heavyweights of sociology. Karl Marx argued it was pretty much all about economics, specifically the ownership of the means of production. You were either the bourgeoisie who owned it or the proletariat who worked it. Max Weber came along and expanded on this beautifully. He said, well, it's not just money, it's a mix of economic resources, social prestige, and political power. Today, when sociologists measure class, they look at multifaceted modern factors: your level of education, your occupation, where you live, and your income. It's a status you achieve, for sure, not one you are divinely assigned at birth. So let's look at the core features of class and notice the incredibly sharp contrast here. A class system features class consciousness, yes, but it is an open and fluid system. There is basically zero importance attached to birth. It is entirely based on acquired status and merit. And because of this, it actively promotes social mobility and competition. You can move up, and yeah, you can move down. This fluidity directly opposes the rigid, completely unchangeable walls of the caste system. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. Section 5, Changing Social Dimensions in India. Okay, so we have these two competing systems. Let's see what happens when globalization and urbanization basically throw them into a blender. Modern India is undergoing massive social shifts. We're seeing a transition away from rigid social hierarchy straight into intense identity politics. Thanks to industrialization and the Green Revolution, there's a secularization of occupations, which just means people are breaking out of their traditional birth-based job roles. We're even seeing the rise of things like delete capitalism and the explosive growth of entirely new middle classes. But actually, this is also creating totally new problems, like a severe digital divide and modern urban segregation based purely on wealth. So economic shifts are loosening the old caste ties, but they are very rapidly creating brand new class-based divides. Which leads us to Section 6, Comparison of Caste and Class. This right here is the climax of our analysis. Let's put everything we've learned into a direct, side-by-side view to truly lock in your understanding. Walking systematically through this, on the basis of membership, caste is given by birth, class is achieved by your actions. In terms of nature, caste is closed, rigid, and permanent. Class is open, flexible, and temporary. Look at marriage. Caste demands strict endogamy. Class is open and exogamous. Conceptually, caste is ancient and deeply cultural, whereas class is a modern economic construct. And finally, mobility. In a caste system, your social mobility is highly restricted. In a class system, it is fluid and open. This breakdown is literally the ultimate summary of rigidity versus fluidity. And that leaves us with one incredibly massive question for the modern era. Is caste simply turning into class in India, or are they merging into an entirely new social hierarchy altogether? As wealth mobility increases, but endogamy and identity politics remain super strong, the future of social stratification is incredibly complex. I really want you to ponder that question as we wrap up today. Thank you so much for engaging with this explainer and for joining me on this deep dive into the fascinating architecture of human society. Keep learning and keep asking the big questions.